During one of the first few press conferences after the crime, law enforcement made statements that they weren't sure if the victims were targeted or if the house were targeted. This theory is not unfounded since those words came from law enforcement themselves. In this episode, we're going to dive into that and talk about possible theories on how the house could be a target.
If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello.
So, what are we talking about today?
Well, we are talking about the Idaho 4, episode 3.
Yes.
And I think in the first episode, we just kind of told what happened. Second episode, my thought is they have the right person in custody because of the evidence. And
we had a great discussion.
Yeah, we'd had a great discussion, and you're like, well, not so fast. Mm-hmm. You know, there could be some other things out there. Mm-hmm. So I've been open to that.
Yep.
You know, and tried to look around and see if I could, you know, find some things. I think I said in one episode that you are, you know, part of a community of internet sleuths who, you know, look at some evidence through FOIA requests and things like that. And because you play your podcast very loud, I hear them. So
sorry.
No, that's all right. So, you know, I hear some of them and I think to myself, that's weird. Yep. You know,
there's a lot of weird.
There's that's suspicious,
yep.
Right? You know, so I try to be open to both sides of every issue. And I think something that, I don't know if I want to call it weird yet. Maybe you could fill me in a little bit. But I know that maybe to start this episode, there is some history with the apartment that...
the house
that this particular crime took place in.
Yes.
And... I've heard some things like the group of people who were there previously,
yeah.
You know, and some activities that happen in that house. That's like allegedly, right? But, you know, it's like, it's not far-fetched that there is something on the side that may be going on that either Brian Kohberger got caught up in,
maybe,
or he's just a patsy, that this happened and he's the guy that's going to take the fall for a bunch of other things that are going on because circumstance put him in that position.
So that's what happened in the true crime community online before Brian Kohberger's name ever came out.
And
so,
that was how long? A month?
So
2 months?
A month, about exactly almost a month. So it happened on the crime happened on November 13th.
Right.
It looks like they probably had his name on November 29th.
But we didn't
left.
have it. When did the world know? In January, right?
December 30th, I believe, is
so,
when they went into the house. So he left for that road trip back home, I think around December 15th. So yeah, from November 13th to the new year.
A lot of speculation.
Going on. So there was not just wild speculation, but a lot of videos, things. So,
but let's start at the house because there's a lot, right? So let's start at the house because I think that captured my attention a little bit. So there's this 6 group of friends or roommates that are living there the night of the crime. Mm-hmm. However, prior to these 6 group of friends, there's another group of maybe college students who are living in this house, and there's a potential carryover, and this carryover from the previous group to this group is a little bit sus.
Well, so this whole case is a lot of, whenever you look into something, there's just always something that's like, that's too much of a coincidence.
I can live with that.
Like there has been many, not one or two. It has been many, and it's I always say, how many coincidences does it take to be like, okay, something's going on?
So let's take them one at a time.
Okay,
don't overfeed me.
Right.
Okay.
So the history of the house. One of the big coincidences is that the president of the university grew up in that house.
That's funny.
Hello. Like what?
Yeah.
Okay. And he was the president of the university. This happened at the university, so I understand being involved in speaking on it and things like that, but he really seemed to go above and beyond, inserting himself into press conferences and things like that, where really you need to be there. I don't know. He also wrote a book about how to handle a crisis like this.
Before or after?
So after the crime, but I don't know how. I don't know when he started writing it, but it was already been published. Like he's
well, that's pretty quick
less
then.
than a year.
Yeah.
Like it was really fast.
Okay.
Like it was handled so greatly that I got to write a book to tell how to handle this. But the house, the roommates that were currently living in it, so it seems like. So it was like sororities and fraternities. That house had turned over many times, even with frats. So at one time it was like all guys living there. Someone would get into a lease of a room, and then another lease of a room would open up, and then they'd get a friend in there or whatever, but it would always seem to be like fraternity or sorority related. And before the current group of 6 that were living there, there was, I believe, just one certain sorority, and all the girls that were in that house were a certain sorority. And, I've watched a lot about that too. Like that's typical. Like it would be
but is there
atypical to have many different sororities living together in a house.
Yeah. So let's narrow it down, because we want to talk about a few things, right? We don't want to just talk about the house. We want to talk about a few things. So let's narrow it down. So my understanding is somebody, because I just want to cut to the chase, right? We don't need to set the stage here.
Gotcha.
A lot of people know everything that's going on. So one of the people who were in the house previously was, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is just the information I'm overhearing.
Okay.
One of the people prior to the 6 that were living there now, or when this happened, was involved in some way with drugs and was arrested for it, or in some way. I keep hearing one of the people who were carried over from the previous group was arrested for drugs or part of a so-called drug ring, and that this house was earmarked as maybe a house that you could procure.
So one of the things about this case is the odd silence that every college kid involved, no one's spoken out.
So nobody's speaking out. Nobody's talking about anything. But do we know if somebody in that house previously was somehow attached to drugs?
So I don't know about the previously.
Okay.
I don't know about a previous roommate being attached to drugs.
Okay.
What I do know is that in my experience, when you would rent a room or an apartment or anything like that in a college town, you would go through the landlord and you would sign a lease, and you would be through the landlord, you would have your own lease and be making the payments to the landlord. because people have done deep dives on the history of the house, it seems like just the room leases were transferred from one renter to another without actually going through the landlord of the house. And people have done investigations on who owned the house and all this. And I don't know, there's a lot of speculation about that, but
so maybe I don't have a big, maybe I have a misunderstanding about the house, which is great. So that's good because everybody subleases, right? Hey, I kind of signed my name to this, but hey, if you come in and you stay in the room and I can go somewhere else and I'm subleasing, you're kind of paying me, I'm paying them, so that's no big deal, right? I can live with that. I guess what I'm trying to understand is they were pretty quick to tear this house down.
oh yeah.
And I just felt like from some of the things that I was hearing, and maybe I erroneously thought it was because of drugs, because I've heard of drugs and, that being kind of a drug house, maybe. But that's fine if it's not.
So
but
I'm
why
not
would
saying
they tear
it's
it
not.
down?
You're saying it was a roommate. It's not. It was not a roommate.
Okay, fine. So yeah, correct me quickly and let's move on to the next point.
So the house is associated with drugs because there was a college student who did speak out and came forward, and it was already speculated. Like
every college house in the world.
Yeah, but one of the victims' moms has gotten herself into trouble with that and gotten arrested because of drugs. There's already like that connection.
Yeah.
But
Hearing a lot about drugs.
Person came out and said that was a known drug house. Like
Good.
There is a girl, a college age girl. I don't know if she was in college or, affiliated with that university at all, but there's video footage of her being in that house, coming out of that house. People know her.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
And she has been arrested for
go.
selling drugs to somebody and was actually arrested because somebody that she sold to died of a fentanyl overdose.
There you go.
And
okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and the coincidences that or the weird things and why speculations keep coming up about that is that happened in another state, but the person who died was a college student that actually had attended that University of Idaho. But this happened in another state, and her dealer that she got it from, also I think her boyfriend, were arrested, and they were going to have a hearing. And I remember going online to watch the hearing, and I think I saw footage of it. They ended up dismissing the case, like dismissed the case. Like they just got let go. And that was a lot of speculation too. Like why? What did they spill? Like they ratted out somebody or said something.
But the connection is
they were in that house.
They were in the house. Okay.
They were in that house,
we're
and
staying on
she
the house.
was the connection to those college kids to get those drugs in that house.
Got it. Okay, that helps clarify that for me.
Yep.
Why do you believe? Because there's other speculation, so I need to hear from you.
Yep.
Why do you believe they tore the house down a year and a half before the trial even takes place?
Yeah.
Because we have known, just to set the stage here a little bit, we have known juries to go to a location
we want to tour the scene.
We want to tour the scene. We want to see where things have happened. Mm-hmm. How could they have happened in the way that you said they happened?
Exactly.
If I can't go in there and see how much space was available and all that.
Acoustics.
So tell me, why do you believe, or why does the community believe they tore the house down?
Well, the drug connection was there. Was it a stash house? Was there something in there? Was there evidence, residual things of that? That's the big one. Yeah. Why would you tear the house down? Everybody was appalled at that was going to happen.
So I wasn't, because I'm on the other side of things, right? I wasn't, because we had said, I think in episode 1, Idaho wanted the University of Idaho wanted their students back. Everybody had got out of Dodge.
Yep. Everything seems to be controlled by what the University of Idaho wants.
So everybody got out of Dodge.
Yep.
And this is a business. It's a place of higher education,
Yes,
but it's
it is.
also a business
Yep.
that makes money, probably a lot of money. And they're like, hey, we want to restore our campus environment and the safety of our students and not have this blight, of people coming from all over the place to look at this house that's empty and do that. So for me, why did they tear the house down? Because we don't want people coming up and making a big thing. We want to kind of get back to normal. That's what
Sure.
I would think.
That's the talking point. Yeah.
Yes.
So
what's the opposite?
Well, that house was not a focal point. It was off campus. It was tucked away in a back corner, a road not well traveled. That road doesn't lead to anywhere except for housing. So unless if you live there, you're not going to a destination or something like that.
Right.
Why would you tear the house down? You don't want the jurors in there to see the close proximity of the rooms of the victims to the rooms of the survivors. Why didn't they hear anything? What could they have heard?
Good point.
Things like that. I don't want to be graphic, but bodies in a house, left in a house for 8 hours. All I've heard everyone describe is the smell of that alone would make you run out of the house. Like, how could you be in a house with that in there for that long of time? Like those kinds of things. Just to see, the path of travel of,
I agree.
Going from room to room, and could it be done in 15 minutes or less? All of that.
So I agree that it's weird. I'll just keep using that word.
Yep.
That they tore that down. Like, I didn't understand that. They could have blocked it off. I know it's in close proximity to other thing and shared parking lots with other housing there. But,
It did not have shared. It had its own part. It was like its own little house, own little parking lot. Yeah. So it didn't really impact anybody else.
Yeah. So, I mean, they could have blocked that off, or whatever, and kind of kept people out, put a fence around it or whatever.
And they did for a while.
Yeah. So I get that, but maybe there's some gawkers. We personally went to a place where a very famous
Making a Murderer.
The Stephen Avery. Yeah, so we went to the Stephen Avery junkyard, and drove in, and
just because we happened to be in the area, so we're like, we're here, let's go check it out.
And we took a picture by the sign, so we were the gawkers, right? And
Yeah.
Okay, are they trying to because the Stephen Avery, we were in the area, but it was off the beaten path.
Oh yeah, we had to go find it.
We had to go find it. So if you're motivated, you could find places like that. And there was a lot of people, a lot of your internet sleuths camped out right there, right? So, okay, they're trying to maybe get rid of some of that. But still, get rid of it after the trial. I think there's some evidentiary value there to have it.
Yes.
So, but you did mention the drugs, and that's what I'm curious about, because no great conspiracy can be, moved forward without there being something like money or drugs or sex or love. You can't move it forward, or power. You can't move that forward unless there's something to conspire about.
Yep.
And in this case, I think there's a lot of energy around the drugs. So you mentioned the one girl who happened to be in the house, and this was a particular area, but it may go deeper than that, than it just being a little bit of drugs
just
here.
Kids.
Yeah, just the kids. It could be either or, a big group of, I hate to say cartel, but, drug folks trying to control and manage that block or that area, or It could be law enforcement.
So nobody thinks it's a gang or the cartel
Okay.
because of the way that the crime happened. Like they will typically leave a message, send a message. Like they wouldn't have left any survivors. Like that's
And a knife is kind of weird. Yeah.
And the knife, like all that's just weird.
Yep.
These are just all alleged speculations, but
I'm here for it.
looking at a lot of evidence that's been out there. Okay.
Right.
So knowing that they're it's college, there's going to be, some drugs around and things like that. Right. Okay. So the girl that's in there doing that, she's the low level, I got the contacts. I'm the cool kid. I'm going in. Yeah. I'll get it for you. But then she's got the people she's getting it from and things like that. So someone did a deep dive on, okay, so law enforcement does drug busts.
Yeah.
Right? And they have records of that. So they have to document, when they're making a drug bust, what did they collect? How much was it? And someone went through all those reports, and what they collected did not match what they were getting rid of. Like they have to incinerate it or whatever they do to get it so big red flag there. Like what's going on?
Right.
And yeah, you don't want to accuse anybody of, it's not even a conspiracy. It's what do you call that? A
corruption.
Yes.
I don't. I would call it a corruption.
You don't want to accuse of corruption like that, but
Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, yes, there could just be a random guy out there who decided I'm going to be a serial killer and I'm going into this house because I picked this house and I went in and did it. But
Yeah.
there's also corrupt people out there.
For sure.
And when you're looking at reports that say we collected this much, but we only got rid of this much and it's not equaling out, what could be happening? I think they're trying to make some money on the side and putting that money or the drugs back out there. And there's like this, and that might not be true, but something is going on where there's some kind of ring that it looks like to me. And that house had just flipped the residence that you were talking
Yes.
about. So it had just been, so this happened in November, and the previous December, so not even 12 months, 11 months earlier, all the roommates left except for one. And the one that was left is one of the victims. And she filled the house with like other sorority members and her best friend and friends. So a couple of them only moved in August. Like they weren't there that long. And I just feel like if you're moving into this house that has a history of the party house and the drugs going through it, and you're like, wait, what's going on here? Or you're starting to get suspicious to something because one of the victims was like a true crime sleuth. Like she followed the online true crime community, and she was so involved that she like thought she saw a missing person in a store and like was trying to report on it and things like that. And I just feel like it looks like someone caught on to something, found out about something, intercepted something, and made the wrong person mad. Like something went way wrong. And because if it's not a serial killer,
Right.
this was a horrific crime, and someone went in there with a motive and a vengeance. And I don't know, a lot of people speculate that maybe some of the either roommates or other college kids knew maybe something was going down that night, because there's a lot of footage of college kids that night, like at the food truck. and they're all on their phones. Like of course we're all always on their phone, but it just, you got to watch the videos and see like how they're like looking, look at this, look, and there's, other surveillance cameras and stuff. And it just seemed like something was going down that night, and maybe they thought it was a shakedown or like a message was going to be sent, but nobody thought something like that would happen.
So nobody's actually said that publicly.
Oh, no. This is just total random speculation based on just different theories, what was going on that night.
But I can get behind the fact that this group was a little oblivious to what maybe the history of the house was.
Yeah, a lot of them were new in that house.
And probably were speaking up or speaking
to the wrong people.
About the wrong stuff at the wrong time. Maybe thinking that, hey, I'm having a conversation with a safe person in a safe place.
Yes.
And maybe that wasn't the case. I can get behind some of that, and I can understand that happens. We know somebody who had a great job, was advancing in this job and doing great work and being, probably one of the best possible people to do this job, but saw an opportunity to make a little extra money. Not life-changing money, but just a little extra money, and took that path of making just a little extra money by advancing in this job, making a little extra. And this is on a whole different scale. So to come and tell me that, hey,
that
maybe
can't happen. Yeah.
Maybe a police officer or somebody who's making, $50,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
And wants to buy a boat, or a tree stand for hunting is just a little out of their range. Be like, hey, you can make a little extra. And, oh, by the way, this person in this house is kind of onto things. And do I risk my reputation and my job? Because I did this, what they may think is a little thing, to make a little bit of extra money. No, I don't want this person taking me down, and if we can cover it up some way, it could potentially happen. That seems far-fetched to me.
I see.
But we know somebody who took a little bit of money because the opportunity presented itself, right?
Yep.
And, at the end of the day,
crazier things have happened.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they got caught, they fessed up, they moved on, and, they didn't have to kill anybody, but some people will protect what they believe is their livelihood, their reputation, and it'll spiral out of control. So I know that that's possible.
Well, and
so I can settle on that. I don't know if that happened here, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on that makes me think, it's not impossible.
Well, we talked about, where you're going to kill somebody over that. I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life because of that. But I was like, well, we see it all the time on true crime shows. I'm going to kill my wife instead of getting a divorce. Like, people make those decisions.
Which is stupid to me, but
it happens.
Right. You're right. And
it happens.
That's where I have to concede this point, even though I would want to think that people aren't that stupid.
No, they're not. And I'm not saying that law enforcement did it.
Yeah.
I'm saying that it just seems that something was going on with drugs, and law enforcement was being very suspicious with things. Like, they had shown up to this house for noise complaints, and it seems like minor stuff, but you just keep adding up all this minor stuff. Right. I'm here for a noise complaint. Okay. I'm going to go to the back door and be like, I pounded on the front door and nobody came to the door. No, you didn't. You did. It's on footage. You didn't knock on the door. You're just going around back. It looks like they're checking out the house. They make weird comments about, the second floor had a balcony and, there's no steps going up to that balcony. And after the crime, there was a ladder leaning against the house
that nobody took,
like
right?
that a ladder that could get up to the second floor balcony, and they didn't take it into evidence.
Right.
Like, why would you not take that into evidence? We talked about the grub truck footage. Maddie is at that grub truck with an oversized black jacket on. Like, it stands out very clearly with her flapping her arms in that jacket. And that jacket was found the next day or whenever law enforcement showed up on a fire hydrant at the curb outside the house, like not right outside the house, like a street over or something along this wood line. And there's body cam footage of the cops going there, picking it up, checking it out, and like throwing it down and leaving. Like, why would you leave that?
Yeah.
It, just so much suspicious stuff
Right.
About the law enforcement that you're just like, okay, I don't know. Something happened. Okay, it's a random serial killer. Or something else.
So I don't want to get off the something else because I think the something else has merit to discuss, right? So I think at the end of the day, and maybe at the end of this episode, we can confidently say that it's not a slam dunk for Brian Kohberger being the accused and being able to convict.
Not by any means right now.
Right.
No.
So I think there are enough what ifs, and I'll use the term what ifs, out there to say, if you look over here, there's compelling evidence to say that this could be an alternative theory as to what happened. And maybe in our next episode, we could talk about, so if Brian Kohberger is going to be the patsy in all this, because nobody else's DNA has been identified. There has been other male DNA.
There's 3 other
male
sources
DNA out there,
of
but
male
nobody
DNA.
has been identified except for the person who's supposedly the murder weapon's holster or the sheath. That's the evidence that they want to take a look at and say, somebody brought a murder weapon here in a holster or a sheath. They left it here because it belonged to nobody in here. And this person's DNA. So if somebody's DNA was on the lamp, I don't care about that. Maybe somebody came a couple nights before, turned on the lamp, and we don't know who that guy is. Right. We're not going to do, genealogy to figure out that. I want to find out who's on the sheath.
Right.
But for his DNA to be on there and the police to potentially, or some drug people potentially, to have committed this crime, how does Brian Kohberger fit into that? Because they have excellently, I warned you about that.
Yeah,
they have excellently placed his DNA at the scene for him to be the patsy. So is there a connection? And I found out through your podcast that there is. The people that you've been listening to have said Brian Kohberger wanted to work for the Idaho police.
Yep.
Brian Kohberger maybe was on the side of, hey, you guys are corrupt. I'm a criminologist.
That's what I think.
I'm going to expose.
Yep.
So we know this guy's kind of a night owl and he likes to.
He's on to us.
Yeah, he's on to us. Let's set him up for this. So I'm not close to that theory, but there needs to be a connection. So I think we've discussed the house and said there's some nefarious things going on. Now, how can we connect where the evidence is showing this person, was he there to solve a crime? but or could be convicted of one? Or was he in the area because he's just, hey, I'm a stargazer and I just happen to be in the area? And was his DNA planted there? Because he does apparently have a connection to the Idaho police.
He does.
So maybe in the next episode, we could talk about that theory. I think we've talked about the drugs and the house, and that's history. Let's talk about maybe how we can tie this together to how Kohberger could ultimately be a patsy in all this and somebody else get away with this murder. Is that fair? Are you prepared to have that conversation, Kimberly?
Yes.
All right. Close us out then.
Okay. We hope you'll join us back for that discussion on our next episode. We'll see you then. Bye.